SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, this is Dr. Bhanupriya Rohila from Mohanlal Sukharia University. This lecture will be dealing with Wordsworth's poem titled Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood. The poem is a part of the third unit of the paper British Romantic Literature as per the CBCS syllabus run by Utkal University for the students of semester 3 of BA English Honours. The poem is an ode. The full title goes as Ode, Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood. It is also known as Immortality Ode or the Great Ode. It was composed by William Wordsworth. The poem has two distinct parts. The four stanzas were composed as part 1 and later Wordsworth revised and reworked on it until it finally was published as Ode in a poetry collection titled Poems in 2 volumes in 1807. It was a collection by Wordsworth only. The currently known version of the poem as Ode, Intimations of Immortality came around the year 1815. Wordsworth in this poem, which has been considered as one of his masterpieces, has deliberated upon his lifelong all-time favorite subject areas like childhood and its memories, the impact of nature on human mind and soul, as he does in the other poems like Tintern Abbey and Prelude. The poem Immortality Ode has been composed as a Pindaric ode of 11 stanzas, which are of varying length and different rhymes and different feet. On thematic threads, there is a gradual development of themes in different parts of the poem. First, there is a sense of loss of freshness and innocence of childhood, and also loss of the energy of youth. Therein, he talks of death also. In a tone all the way philosophic, he resorts to the thought of pre-existence of the souls and birth after death. Before we are born, we as souls have close connect with the divine, which is lost as we are born. And thereafter, as we grow in this world, we lose it even more to a greater degree. This journey takes us farther or takes us away from the eternal. And as we know that Wordsworth was a worshipper of nature, so how could he leave nature to incorporate in the poem? So Wordsworth also has taken it into account that is the impact of nature on a human's mind, and elaborates that by keeping in touch with the nature, we can keep the connect with the memories of the divine in our mind. And this, in turn, renders us able to sympathize and keep connect with the creation of the divine and the other fellows of the world. He emphasizes upon the idea that there is the presence of the divine nature in every object of it. Let's take up the poem in all its detail and all aspects, so that we can get to know what Wordsworth wants us to know in the poem. He begins this poem with an epigraph, which has been taken from another poem of his own. The poem was titled as The Rainbow, and it is also known as My Heart Leaps Up When I Behold a Rainbow in the Sky. This poem was composed in the year 1802. So the last three lines of this poem make the beginning of our Immortality Ode, wherein the poet conveys the background of his mental state. He feels joyful in this mindset and expresses the hope of retaining the innocence and freshness of childhood in his youth and old age, when he says, "A child is the father of the man." He wishes his days to be bound each to each with natural piety. That is, he wishes to have the hopes and innocence of the childhood until the moment he dies. Bound each to each gives us an image of close connected state with all that has gone by in reference to time. This thought of losing on the memories of the divine and innocence of childhood and hope of retaining the connect frames the base of this larger poem, Immortality Ode. This ode, he begins with the lines wherein he expresses a subtle sense of loss and the consequent grief. He speaks, "There was a time when meadow, grove and stream, the earth and every common sight, to me did seem apparelled in celestial light, the glory and the freshness of a dream." He tells us in these lines that once there was a time when every object of nature, like a meadow or the green grassland, grove, that is orchards or forest, or a stream, or any other ordinary object of nature, in his common sight seemed to be luminous and shining. That is, apparelled in celestial light, means covered in heavenly or holy glare or shine. Thus, all objects of nature had certain glory and freshness of belonging to a dream. They felt like a dream. Here it is clear that the poet is talking of a time that is no more, and that the glory and freshness of that dream, along with that shine, they don't exist anymore. Things have changed, and wherever he goes or looks now, whether it is daytime or night, he doesn't find the things he used to see earlier. They don't have that glory, that they don't have that shine in them. This stanza establishes that there is something that is lost or that has left the world, and now the poet feels himself incomplete without them. There is a sense of loss creeping into his spirit. there is also the attempt to revive the scenes and find what he wants to continue. The stanza number 2 starts with the examples of these observations. He says, "The rainbow comes and goes, and lovely is the rose. The moon doth with delight look around her when the heavens are bare. Waters on a starry night are beautiful and fair. The sunshine is a glorious birth." Here, he talks about the routine of nature and finds that the same things happen quite often. The imagery becomes vivid, and Wordsworth gives us the pictures of rainbow, which still comes and departs. Then he talks about the rose, which is still lovely. The picture now changes, and we are given a picture of nighttime, when in the cloudless sky the moon shines and spreads its delightful rays on the surface of waters in the starry night. The waters and the whole thing with the reflection of stars in the waters is still beautiful and fair. Every day the sun rises, and this sunrise still is just like a new gorgeous birth for the poet. But at the core, the poet knows and feels that wherever I go, that there hath passed away a glory from the earth. That is, wherever he might go to watch anything, things are the same, but some glory, that is, some light has left that scene. Not only that scene, but some light has left this whole world, and that is missing now. Now, Wordsworth moves on to describe the present scenes that he observes with his senses. Here, he uses the senses of the eye and the ear and joyously celebrates the abundant pleasures. Now, while the birds thus sing a joyous song, and while the young lambs bound as to the tabor sound, he listens to the joyful singing of the birds and finds enthusiasm in the leaping of young lambs who are dancing to the sound of the tabor. So tabor is a musical drum-like instrument. It's very small in size, and mostly rustic people use it. So the lambs are leaping over the sound of this musical instrument called tabor, and suddenly a grieving thought strikes him. He says, "To me alone there came a thought of grief. A timely utterance gave that thought relief, and I again am strong." And this thought of grief is spontaneously expressed, given a timely utterance. And the poet is instantly relieved of that grief. So now the poet feels strong again after that moment of weakness and sadness because of that timely utterance, because he could utter it duly. After his revival from grief, he again observes all that makes him happy and has haunted him in nature. So what is it? "The cataracts blow their trumpets from the steep. No more shall grief of mine the season wrong. I hear the echoes through the mountains throng. The winds come to me from the fields of sleep, and all the earth is gay. Land and sea give themselves up to jollity, and with the heart of May doth every beast keep holiday. Here he addresses the reader and tells that he listens to the sounding cataracts. Cataracts are the small waterfalls. So he listens to the sounding cataracts on the mountains. He finds that he must not wrong the season by being sad, that it would not justify the season. The mountains are echoing with winds, make him feel dreamy, meaning ultimately light in spirit. The whole earth, land and sea seem to be excited and happy altogether with the spirit of jollity. In the cheerful and excited mindset, that is, in the heart of May, every creature shares the same feeling. So May season originally signifies rebirth or revival of things, as it is the time of spring. So it also refers to glow, freshness, renewal and youth. So Wordsworth says, with the heart of May, every creature keeps holiday or cheerfulness in mind and heart. In such a mind and surrounding, Wordsworth calls out to the shepherd boy and says, "Thou, child of joy, shout round me, let me hear thy shouts, thou happy shepherd boy." Here he is using apostrophe in the phrase, "thou child of joy." Not only that he wants to listen to the joyous, enthusiastic sounds of the shepherd boy, but he also wants to share the same spirit of joy with the shepherd. Stanza 3 ends with this address to the child of joy, that is, the shepherd boys around him who give him the message of being happy and casting away all sadness. So he continues to address the shepherd boy and tells that they are the blessed creatures, and he has heard them calling to each other. He witnesses heaven in their laughter and their celebrations. He says, "Ye blessed creatures, I have heard the call. Ye to each other make, I see, the heavens laugh with you in your jubilee. My heart is at your festival, my head hath its coronal, the fullness of your bliss I feel it all." So the poet joins these blessed creatures. Who are these blessed creatures? He says the blessed creatures are the shepherds and also the cattle and other things. So he joins them in their festival of happiness and finds that his heart feels their happiness thoroughly, and his head has its coronal. So coronal is a wreath or a crown of flowers. So the head is crowned with their happiness. The head has that crown of flowery happiness. In such a state, he is aware that no sadness or unwillingness should strike his mind, while the whole earth is dressing herself in the cheerfulness in this beautiful morning of May. But what he says further, "O evil day, if I were sullen while earth herself is adorning this sweet May morning, and the children are culling on every side. In 1,000 valleys far and wide, fresh flowers, while the sun shines warm, and the babe leaps up on his mother's arm, I hear, with joy I hear." Here, The poet further gives us the audio and visual images when he speaks that he could see far and wide and find children plucking flowers in valleys, while the sun shines and the little babies leap in their mother's arms. He listens to all of these sounds and watches all of these scenes with equally shared joy. That is, he finds joy everywhere around and he joins it. While amid all this celebration, abruptly the poet is reminded of that long bygone glory. And now his mind is full of the feeling of isolation in the following lines. But there is a tree of many one, a single field which I have looked upon. Both of them speak of something that is gone. The pansy at my feet doth the same tale repeat. Whither is fled the visionary gleam? Where is it now, the glory and the dream? This single tree and single field, they remind him that something from them has gone away. The little flower pansy. So pansies are little flowers. So pansies at his feet also tell the same tale to him, that the visionary gleam, the shine and glory of dream has gone from there. And the poet does not know where they have gone. Thus ends this stanza number 5, and the next stanza begins. So it begins on a different note here. The poet now explicates on certain philosophical precepts. He believes that souls exist before body, and before we are born in this bodily form in this world, we exist somewhere in heaven with the divine in form of souls. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath had everywhere its setting. So here he says, when we are born on this earth, it is just like a sleep, wherein we forget who or what we are. The truth is that our souls, which we are born with, which are the shining sun of energy for our life, have their settings elsewhere, and they have traveled greatly to be with us. Next, not in entire forgetfulness and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home. So here Wordsworth links this pre-existence to the earthly stoppage, that we as souls don't come to this world in complete forgetfulness and blank naked state. We come with the shine, which looks faint as we come to this earth or to this world, or we take birth in the form of body, then the shine goes away. So this is the same thing that we discussed in the beginning of the poem, that he could see things apparelled in the celestial light or glory that he cannot see now, because now in this world we cannot see that. Therefore he says we come as the trailing clouds of heavenly glory, and he also calls heaven or God as our original home. Next he says, heaven lies about us in our infancy. Shades of the prison house begin to close upon the growing boy, but he beholds the light, and whence it flows, he sees it in his joy. The youth who daily farther from the east must travel, still is nature's priest. and by the vision splendid is on his way attended. At length the man perceives it die away and fade into the light of common day. Here in these lines, Wordsworth has tried to give us a detailed journey and its impact on human mind. So during infancy, we are closest to the heavens. That is, we are closest to the God or divine or divinity. But as an infant grows into a baby, the habits of this world make us forget the heavenly memories. In the phase of the childhood, as a growing boy, we still have some glimpses of the divine light and its source and flow and are joyed by its presence. But in the youth of life, one has to heed to the matters of the world with energy, and one has to be too much occupied by them. So a young person travels away from the east of the life, that is, the presence of the divine is less heeded to once we are grown up. And then we tend to forget the presence of that spiritual insight, what he has called as the heavenly glory. Still, there are some fading impacts, and a young person can still be a worshipper of nature as nature's priest. Here, Wordsworth is autobiographical since he is known as nature's priest. He says that in youth, a man is still accompanied by the divine light and vision and its illumination. After that, when one grows old, this vision dies away into the light of common day. That is, things remain the same, but as the poet has referred to the disappearance of something, things remain without that celestial light. Now we see that the poet has clearly identified and how and why it has left this earthly abode. He now explicates on nature and man's relationship in various phased perspectives in the next stanza. So there he speaks, earth fills her lap with pleasures of her own. Yearnings she hath in her own natural kind, and even with something of a mother's mind, and no unworthy aim, the homely nurse doth all she can to make her foster child, her inmate man, forget the glories he hath known, and that imperial palace whence he came. So here he says, the earth has its own pleasures and yearnings, that is longingness. So the earth has its own pleasures and longings. Here Wordsworth now compares earth with a mother and says that just like a mother, she has no unworthy aim. That is, she is absolutely caring towards mankind. And man is her foster child and her inmate man as well. Inmate is someone who lives in an institutional place. So here that place is the earth. Thus, in a motherly manner, the earth in all its caring ways makes man forget the glories of that imperial palace, that is the heaven from where he had come on the earth. In the next stanza, the poet now is going to look upon the phased growth of a man's life and its relation to the nature. Behold the child among his newborn blisses, a 6 years darling of a pygmy size. See where amid work of his own hand he lies, fretted by sallies of his mother's kisses, with light upon him from his father's eyes, see at his feet some little plan or chart, some fragment from his dream of human life, shaped by himself with newly learned art. So here, he explains the child of 6 years, a 6-year-old child who is in his pygmy size, that is, who is small in size, he is enjoying with his newly acquired joys. He is amid his work of childhood imagination, with his face covered with his mother's kisses. So he is getting the love of his mother, and at the same time, his father's affectionate look also watches him. He has some plan or map about something, which his childlike fantasies about his life are there in those things. So what all he sees, a wedding or a festival, a mourning or a funeral, and this hath now his heart, and unto this he names this song. Then will he fit his tongue to dialogues of business, love, or strife. But it will not be long ere this be thrown aside. And with new joy and pride, the little actor cons another part, filling from time to time his humorous stage with all the persons down to pulsate age that life brings with her in her equipage. He imagines, now in these lines, he imagines weddings, festivals and funerals and mournings too. So they all are the events that shape human life. Their joys, their happiness, their sorrows are all represented in these forms of festivals and funerals. Thus, with his own learnings, he frames his own song. He soon would learn the dialogues of business, love, and other struggles. Soon, he will become worldly. Soon, this will also be over, and the little actor would assume new roles that take him along the different stages of life to reach his old age. So the poet here ends the stanza with his comment that all this phased development of life is not new to this world, and it seems as if it were just the imitation game of earlier generations. So every newborn does nothing but imitates the earlier generation, as if this whole imitation were, this whole vocation were endless imitation. Thus, the poet feels that all the human activities on earth are a mere game of an imitation, and for all their existence of centuries, humans tend to act and behave the same way as their ancestors or their predecessors have done. They grow to forget the heavenly presence of that celestial light as they grow in this world. Wordsworth has concluded that it is the child that has the most close connect with God, the divinity or the heavens. So in the next stanza, he focuses on the characteristics of the child and in various terms expounds on the virtues of being in a divine connection. He states by addressing the child now, and he says, "Thou, whose exterior semblance doth belie thy soul's immensity, thou best philosopher who yet dost keep thy heritage, thou eye among the blind, that deaf and silent readst the eternal deep, haunted forever by the eternal mind." Here, He addresses the child as an immense soul whose exterior semblance, that is, the body, is not a full suit, and that the body deceits. How it deceits? It cannot justify the soul's greatness or enormity in itself. So he says the body deceits or lies. As the poet opines, the child is the best philosopher who still has the heavenly connect, and he is able to see what other people, that is the grown-ups, are blind to. A child is able to read and look into the secrets of life and is always attended by the eternal mind, that is the God. The poet continues to address the child in some different terms and says, "Mighty prophet, seer blessed, on whom those truths do rest, which we are toiling all our lives to find, in darkness lost, the darkness of grave." So the child for the poet is a mighty prophet or the messenger of the God, and he is the best seer, that is the one who speaks the truth only. So the child is able to connect himself to all the truths that the adults or the young spend their lifetime to find and are not able to find them until they are finally lost in darkness of the graves. So the meaning of these lines is that people, once they forget the presence of that celestial light in their lives, are not able to get to the secrets of life, and they die unawares of the heavenly gifts thereafter. In contrast to this state of unaware lifespan of a man, the child has the connect maintained and keeps company of the immortality like sunlight. He says, "Thou over whom thy immortality broods like the day, a master over slave, a presence which is not to be put by. Thou, little child, yet glorious in the might of heaven-born freedom on thy being's height. Why with such earnest pains dost thou provoke the years to bring the inevitable yoke?" So the poet says, thou, that is the child, you are still connected to heaven. That immortality hovers over you like the sun. And this sunlight protects the child as the master protects the slave or the servant. Its protection can't be taken for granted. The child, though a little one, is empowered by the heaven-born freedom, which helps and supports him. Here, Wordsworth earnestly appeals the child as to why the child partakes all the earthly gems of growing into youth and adult age, which make him forget the heavenly presence and invite the inevitable yoke, that is, the indispensable troubles that the youth or the old age brings with it. He further says, "Thus blindly with thy blessedness at strife, full soon thy soul shall have her earthly fright, and custom lie upon thee with the weight, heavy as frost and deep almost as life." The poet now urges him why he puts his blessed life of heavenly delight at risk. He is still talking to the child and asking, why are you putting it at risk? The way a child grows in this world will soon burden the soul with the earthly weight of deeds or tasks. Worldly habits soon will become a destructive force and will cut up deep his life. In the next stanza, the poet feels some relief and certain joy that despite all the forgetfulness of human life and its contradictory stance against the divine presence, there is present the divine light in a child's life. He exclaims, "O joy, that in our embers is something that doth live, that nature yet remembers what was so fugitive." So with that exclamation, there is a relief that nature still allows him to remember the fugitive feeling, that is the fast fading or the running away feelings of the company of the divine. The thought of our past years in me doth breed perpetual benediction, not indeed. For that which is most worthy to be blessed, delight and liberty, the simple creed of childhood, whether busy or at rest, with new-fledged hope still fluttering in his breast. Here, the poet now focuses on and discusses what is there, the childhood days, what is there in the childhood days that still can keep us connected to the heavenly light. He finds joy in remembering those days of childhood. This brings to him the perpetual benediction, that is, a feeling of being blessed by virtues like delight and liberty or freedom and all the hopes and excitements of childhood, which is full of optimism always. And next he says, "Not for these I raise the song of thanks and praise, but for those obstinate questionings of sense and outward things, fallings from us, vanishings, blank misgivings of a creature moving about in the worlds not realized, high instincts before which our mortal nature did tremble like a guilty thing surprised." In these lines, he is now going a step deeper, and the poet now justifies his argument as to why he is singing of childhood. He says he doesn't sing this song of childhood and of thanks and of praise because of these virtues, but he bases his thankfulness into his stubborn questions and doubts when he found his sense and things falling out and disappearing at times. He also talks of the ways of an unaware child who walked into the unrealized truths of this world. He also refers to the high instincts or the divine beliefs before which our worldly beliefs tremble like a guilty thief. Now, Wordsworth tries to justify his song by talking of his belief into the virtues of mankind. These virtues are shadowy recollections of the affections for fellows. In these lines, he says, "But for those first affections, those shadowy recollections, which, be they what they may, are yet the fountain light of all our day, are yet a master light of all our seeing." So these memories are the fountains or the source of light for us to see all our deeds and we otherwise are not able to see our acts in respect to the divine light. This, as a source, explains all other things in a clear light. These shadowy recollections, he says, uphold us, cherish, and have power to make our noisy ears see moments in the being of the eternal silence. So, as Wordsworth says, these memories support us, make us happy and peaceful, and they have power to make our busy and noisy years of life seem smaller in comparison to the eternal silence. That is, the eternal silence is death. Now, Wordsworth consolidates his argument that truths once realized in childhood will never die or never leave us, irrespective of the state, whether busy or idle, irrespective of phase, whether a boy or a man, irrespective of existence, whether for or against joy. Anything can't destroy or abolish those memories of heaven and its presence in our lives, even when we are grown up. So he says, truths that wake to perish never, which neither listlessness nor mad endeavor, nor man nor boy, nor all that is at enmity with joy, can utterly abolish or destroy. Then next he says, hence, in a season of calm weather, though inland far we be, our souls have sight of that immortal sea, which brought us hither, can a moment travel thither, and see the children sport upon the shore, and hear the mighty waters rolling evermore. And hear the mighty waters rolling evermore. These lines express the idea of Wordsworth that in our moments of peace or calm weather, when we are far away from the shore, where from we traveled into this world, that is the childhood visions, we can have or experience the sight of that immortal sea. That is the sea of immortal illuminations or of the heavenly light. We can travel this to and fro in an instant. We can travel and watch children sport there upon the shore of eternity. And this will also let us realize the sound of mighty waters rolling forever. That is, we will have a better realization of the eternal flow of life and its mysteries then. Now that the poet has presented his point, developed that point in form of an argument, and the argument as to the poet's standpoints has been resolved, Wordsworth approves his findings and urges the nature and all life forms to celebrate the span of life. He now calls on everyone to sing and dance to music and beats of the tabor. He also tells them that those who are beyond their song will join them, who play and dance heartfully to feel the gladness of May. In the following lines, we see all this. Then sing, ye birds, sing a joyous song, and let the young lamb bound as to the tabor sound. We in thought will join your throng, ye that pipe and ye that play, ye that through your hearts today feel the gladness of the May. Thus, the poet makes the pleasures of nature all permeating and everybody is happy feeling those. Now, Wordsworth speaks of his belief in nature as the healing force and that it teaches to grow with sense, and this lets a person not to mourn losses. Instead, it teaches to feel happy with the compensations given by nature itself. What though the radiance which was once so bright be now forever taken from my sight? Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower, we will grieve not. These are the lines. He now speaks in clear and eloquent words that the radiance or the light that was there has been taken away for good, and the time that has gone by can't revert. All the things that had a glory will be bare of that glory now. This means that as adults, we are not and will never be again be able to watch that glory in either grass or flower as we did during our childhood. But now, having understood the patterns of nature, he does not grieve for this loss. Instead, he says, rather find strength in what remains behind, in the primal sympathy which having been must ever be, in the soothing thoughts that spring out of human suffering, in the faith that looks through death, in ears that bring the philosophic mind. So here, he will try to find strength from what is there. There is the primal sympathy or the eternal connect with nature, which once established never dies. This connection is strengthened in the soothing thoughts which arise when we suffer, by the faith that looks through death, meaning that when we know that death is not the end of the eternal journey and we are still immortal souls even after our deaths, and by the learning of philosophy that we acquire when we undergo the journey of life, we do not grieve it then. In the last stanza, the poet sums up the poem by summarizing the argument with the clarified words and strengthened beliefs of his own, when he says, addressing the objects of nature, that he now loves them more than he used to love them during his days of childhood or boyhood. So he speaks, and oh, ye fountains, meadows, hills and groves, forebode not any severing of our loves. Yet in my heart of hearts I feel your might. I only have relinquished one delight, to live beneath your more habitual sway. So here he says fountain, meadow, grove and hills should never be detached from his feelings of love. He still feels the might of their love in the deepest parts of his soul, though he accepts that he has relinquished one thing, and that is the constant company of these objects of nature, which delighted him greatly. This is due to too much company of the world, because he has been living with the world, and the worldly ways are stopping him from being with the nature now. I love the brooks which down their channels fret, even more than when I tripped lightly as they. The innocent brightness of a newborn day is lovely, yet the clouds that gather round the setting sun do take a sober colouring from an eye that hath kept watch over man's mortality. So here, an illuminated poet now is talking to the reader that he now loves the brooks more than he loved them in the days when he could dance to their tunes and manner. That is, in his childhood. Every sunrise is still the beginning of a new life for him now. And the clouds around the setting sun are now a sober effect on his mind, since now he knows what death really means, and death for him is not the end. Another race hath been, and other palms are won. Thanks to the human heart by which we live, thanks to its tenderness, its joys and fears. To me, the meanest flower that blows can give thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears. In these last lines of the poem, the poet almost confesses he is and has been a tender human. He has a tender human heart. He accepts that he has begun a new race now, having ended his childhood phase and the departure of the glory ever since. He has entered a new phase. This race would lead him to different palms or rewards. He is thankful to the underlying feeling with which all people live. He is also grateful to the feeling of tenderness, joy, and fears in human life. He says that he is of the mindset in which he can look at the smallest flower and it can give him the thoughts that are more moving than the depth of tears. So now, let's rewind certain things about the poem regarding the thematic concerns and what Wordsworth wants us to understand through the poem. As we have already come across certain ideas that the poet believes in the pre-existence of souls before we are born. This is to say that the poet believes that souls are eternal and they come from heaven when we are, even before we are born, and go back there when we die. So the souls remain, they live in the heaven. This belief makes him understand the real nature of human life and gives him a different perspective of death also. The thought of death doesn't disturb him anymore, and he is able to relish the evening of the day as well as the old age of the life equally, in the sense that recompenses his loss of the celestial light that he used to feel during his childhood, which he has lost with his growth. The journey of life for him has been happy and painful at the same time. A phase of life gives happiness and growing up takes away all those. From the happiness apparelled in celestial light, to the common aspect of the same things and custom of the world are to be understood through the eye of the poet. The pain that is inflicted by this change is pacified by a clearer understanding of nature, and this is what makes the poet disseminate the message of worshipping nature, which, in his opinion, enables one to love his fellow beings and become a better human being thereby. For Wordsworth, beauty of nature is eternal, and it has healing potential if one can connect to that. Human mind is capable of creating visions, and the memories of beauty give us relief from the habits of the world. He even believes that memories of heaven accompany us in infancy, and that is why a child is able to feel the divine. Wordsworth believes that we in an instant can be in the company of that divine connect and watch the children sport on that shore of time with all their eternal happiness. So in the end, he finds that all objects of nature have some potential of happiness, and all things are enlivened by the same divine spirit. There are numerous examples of metaphors, personifications, so personifications of moon, of earth, of land, and of the sea we have seen. There are several examples of alliterations as well, and one perfect example of paradox can be found, as in the famous line is there, "Child is the father of the man." And several other figures of speech one can find in this poem. Wordsworth has in a way alluded Shakespeare from As You Like It when he talks of different stages of man's life and man as an actor. So Wordsworth has also used the same motive. In short, he has presented the themes of immortality, divinity, life stages of human beings, and the loss of memory of heavenly glory in these beautiful lines, using the symbols of spring and other natural phenomena. So this was all about this poem. Thank you for watching.